That.
Classic.
I'm putting this in the private chat here too. So,
Yo, we are live on Beat People Podcast, episode 67. We're going to be talking about the classic standalone MPC. It's always a topic of communication, of discussion, but, there's so many boxes that have come out, and, the MPC is one of the boxes that paved the way. And so I wanted to get some people on here that are fans of the MPC, the classic standalone MPCs, or at very least have owned them and still have an affinity for them in some way. And I'm kind of wondering, why do they still hold so much appeal after all of these years? I mean, some of them are more expensive today than they were when they came out. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But what we're going to do is talk to these guys. We got Ken, we got D Still, we got Upright, and we got Rickey Tinez. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
Chilling.
Yeah, man.
look, various levels of Kelvin.
He's still like, I'm chilling.
Recovering from 420 still, man.
No doubt. So, hey, welcome to the show, Ricky, man. Glad you came down to chill with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is super dope. I've tuned in a couple times before, so this is tight to see that I'm a part of it.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You've been putting in that work. How long have you been doing your YouTube channel, yo?
I want to say, like, avidly, maybe 2 years, I think now.
Oh, dope.
Yo,
yeah.
Breakneck speed, bro. Congratulations on everything with the success of the channel. And before we get started, tell us the connection between you and Star Wars.
Oh, man.
We gotta have that.
Damn, we're going full gas, no brakes.
No, that's right. Let's go.
That honestly kind of came up through the YouTube thing, and like just kind of chatting with JJ a little bit about synths and gear, and then randomly, we were chatting a lot for a while, and then he's like, "Hey, I need some help finishing a song for this bar shot." I'm like, "Okay," and it was taking place on the planet Kijimi, and I use the Kijimi a lot. So we just kind of like, let's try and make something funky and cool and weird. And
dope.
Yeah, after a while, it just kind of happened, which is still weird to think about, but it happened.
No doubt.
That's really
and hold on,
dope.
you know what? I'm gonna try to find this picture because I think it's a ill picture of you with your MPC. You recently picked up an MPC. Which model did you pick up?
Boom, 3000.
3,000. Wow.
Man.
It's the first joint I learned on right there, man.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like, I mean, Ken and I were talking about it for a little bit, but I would think this is the best one.
What do you love about it? What do you love about it?
It's like so I have the 60 Mark II also, and I fell in love with that one a lot too, because the sound is really good. The sequencer is really good. It has that weird kind of randomized swing, but there's like no filters. It's a little clunky in certain ways. So this just feels like I don't know if the processor's beefed up, and it just feels a little easier to navigate. There's a filter. There's a delay I didn't even know existed.
Well, the engine's pretty drastically different.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the actual sampling engine is different. The OS is not that different, but
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing. Like the OS is it's visual enough to like help you just crank out a tune really fast. It did take me a second to get used to milliseconds as opposed to looking at a waveform, but it makes perfect sense now. And I use the number pad way more than I do the jog wheel at this point.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Ken. Let me just ask this real quick, because I know you use the 1000 for live performance. So how does the 3000 fit into your whole like environment now? So is the 3000 just for at home? Obviously, you're not going to take that out, right? So is that just for something you use at the house, or how does that?
Yeah, right now I make. I think in April I've made about a song or two a day, and it's all just on the 3000. And then I have 10 audio outs coming out of the back, going into Ableton. I have everything in its own channel. And then I'll basically do all the song structure, chopping, filtering on here. And then I'll like add a crash or something once in a while there, or like just play the bongos throughout the whole track. And that way I don't want to just waste an entire output to just a single crash that happens like twice, so I'll do the random things in there. But yeah, I make everything on this now, and it makes perfect sense.
One of the nice things
in your studio to it too, right?
What was that?
You're routing everything in your studio to that.
Yeah,
too,
I got 2 MIDI ins and 2 MIDI outs going out to run everything. But honestly, half the time I just use it, and I'll just play a chord on a synth or something and sample that in, because I have an output of my whole studio coming back into it, and that includes like Spotify, YouTube, whatever's playing, and I can just sample that, monitoring off, and just it's so fast. It's crazy fast. I can make a track in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, one of the nice things about that particular unit, and really the 60 as well, but especially that one, is because there isn't a lot of extra frills. So like on the 2000 XL and later, there was effects and other things that were going on, but of course you had to apply them very carefully. And when you start doing things like applying things to individual outs, you were also messing with how it compresses the sound. On the individual outs on those things, I mean, you just get this like uncompressed, like full-bodied sound out of them. So it's a little bit more inviting to go out your 8 outs on that thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing I noticed as well too, because I was kind of scared about using the 8 outs and losing the sound, because I kind of noticed that with the MPC 1000, and I definitely noticed it with the MPC 4000 as well, that everything just kind of like, I mean, it gained clarity, but it just also gained like staleness. It just sounded really exactly the same, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that was my thing, is like I kind of like 2-tracking my MPC. Like I enjoy it. I enjoy that it's a weird dynamic crunch that it does. And I say crunch, but I'm careful in using that term crunch, because I feel like it gets overhyped how some people want to use it. I don't mean in a bit crushy way. I don't mean in like a grungy lo-fi way. It's just this kind of pseudo glue. It's not even like a tape glue or anything. It just kind of pushes everything together just a little bit, and I enjoy that on the 2000 XL, but there is something about going out the 8 outs on those that really, like, it's more of like a powerful.
That's why I love my
defined
2500 though, because my 2500 is my, like, I've used most MPCs, but my 2500 has been like old faithful for me.
Well, let's go around the room and ask everybody really quickly, so we can see where all our biases lie. Yeah. What's your favorite MPC? So we'll start with Corey. Favorite MPC?
So I thought of that. It's a tough one for me.
It's so hard.
We'll come back to being more detailed about it, but let's get the bias out of the way.
Okay. I could say that I think the MPC I used the longest nonstop was the 5000, and so I really have an affinity for that. And it's one of those, that people are kind of like ew about. But.
Nah, I thought the 5000 was cool. It had its issues, but it was really dope.
Yeah, I loved it, man. I used it for years and years. So that's probably my favorite.
Corey,
What about you, Steele?
So for me, it's probably gonna have to be the 2500 and the 2000 XL.
Okay, and
well, I still get 2 answers.
Upright? Yeah. Well, Steele gets 2 answers because.
Okay. So for me, if I were to pick one that I would take on a desert island with me, it would be the 2500.
Okay,
you borrow one of those batteries that can't be toting around.
Upright.
So I started on the 2500, and when I was MPC forums, they were hating on the 2500 so hard, and I was like, man, they were hating on that joint so bad. But I was saying, okay,
those beats were whack too, though. The one.
Well, hold on. There's some legitimate reasons, but we'll get to all of that later. We'll get to why we hate each individual MPC as well.
Yeah. But for me, the dopest MPC I've used would be the Renaissance. I loved it, and I know that may be controversial, but I love the Ren. The Ren.
I don't think it is. I think they took the MPC line to another level when they did.
All right.
Well, you see,
he's picking Ren. Hold on, you got to keep moving down the line. Hold on. What's Ricky's?
You see what's sitting back there?
I'd say the one I used forever and have owned multiples of is the 4000, and that's the one that like. It's one of those. That's the one that gave me the aha moment in why MPCs are incredible. And from there, I really started kind of branching out and exploring. But Okay, we can't give two answers. Yeah,
all right, so my answer is going to be 2000 XL, and I'll just give two quick reasons why. One, because it has the most sentimental value to me. That was the one that I really spent so many nights on and grew so much on. The other reason is I found that I really enjoyed the sound quality along with the ease of use. To me, it was like, that thing is just instant. Like, when you're creating on it, you could just instantly get what you want to get on it, and it didn't lack a lot of the things that some of the later ones kind of lacked that blew my mind about.
I feel you on that. Can I just do a rebuttal real quick? Somebody said 2500 has great features, but the 2000 XL has more feel. I absolutely disagree with you. Feel doesn't come from the machine; it comes from the programmer.
Good point.
So
I could disagree with that.
Ken, you're talking to a drummer.
Oh
yeah,
God!
That's true.
Don't pull that card.
I'm
You're talking to a real beat maker.
No, because
I'm gonna go with Steel on this one.
Because I always hear people like, no, this one has this and this one has that. It feels differently, bro. If you have the timing, you can program it that way.
So here's what I'll say to that. You're right to an extent.
I mean,
however, there is definitely timing differences from unit to unit.
No, there is.
So
there is.
These are very minor differences for the most part. However, I will say when I'm talking feel between those two units in particular, right? For me, the big thing about the 2500 that drove me insane was the actual operating system and the way envelopes were done and that sort of thing, per pad. That's what drove me nuts. And the fact that you had to go to an outside source to get a proper operating system for it.
The JJ,
but see, mine was hooked up with the JJ. I had the luxury 2500.
If you had a 2500 and you weren't using the JJOS, you were doing it wrong.
Yeah, but I even got down with the 1000. I had the 1000 for years. And for me, I'm just like, a lot of people complained about it, but I always made I made a living off of the 1000.
Well, that's cool, but a lot of people made their living on a lot of garbage gear.
No, of course. But you see, but that's what I'm saying. When people say that something has more feel, I'm like, you might have
It's a subjective thing, though.
I think, Ken, it kind of touches base on what you were saying earlier, too, where, like, sometimes people will get an MPC and be like, cool, now I've made it, before you've even made the beat. And, like, you make a beat on it, and you're like, oh, I was expecting more out of this.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that might be the contemplation where it's like, I'm going to get the 60, make a beat on it, and no matter what I do, it's going to be hot.
It's going to be hot, and that's not true. That's not true.
That's a common mistake with almost every bit of gear, and that's the kind of thing when it comes down to it. A lot of people, like, I always tell the story about an ASR-10 to digress off of MPCs, but classic joint. I had an ASR-10 for a year, and I sold it, and it was fine. The ASR-10 was dope. I dug it, but I got it for like $200, and I sold it. And then the guy reached out to me and was like, yo, this thing don't turn on. And he turned it on and didn't, the OS didn't load. And I'm like, yo, that joint is old. You gotta put the disc in. I sent you the disc with it. Turn it back on. I
don't sound like Timbaland. What's wrong?
Yeah. He's like, what's a disc?
Yeah. And then he turned it on, and then he was trying to get like lessons in tech support out of me. I was like, bro, you bought that thing. That's yours, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It was
you it was gonna be magic, and I think that's the same thing with some classic.
I feel like it's less of an issue now, but it was for a long time where people kept trying to attribute other producers' swing, vibe, and feel to the machine, and I think that's what Steel's really getting at.
Yes,
and so I'm being a little bit more particular what I'm talking about, but I think in the broader scope of things, it got really annoying when people were like, "Oh, I want that Pete Rock vibe, I want that Primo vibe, I want that Jay Dilla swing," and it's like that wasn't because of that. Like
that's technique. That's all technique.
Yeah, Ken, I remember my combo was the MPC 2500. The Roland Dr. Groove drum machine, and Acid
Whoa.
Pro. Acid Pro.
Acid
2.0.
Pro.
And I had almost the same setup.
Right?
Almost
Acid
had
Pro
almost the same
2.0,
setup.
bro. That was like my setup.
We had a Gemini DJ. We had the Gemini mixer with the sampler on it.
Yeah, bro, that was my joint.
And it was like a little arcade button type sampler on it, and you would sample with that joint, and yet there was no way to save it, nothing. Like you just had to do it like that, and we would drop that to a really crappy computer with Acid, and then we would take it to my boy's crib, and we would drop that to the SP1200.
Yo, so D was the 2500 your first MPC?
So I learned on a 3000.
Okay.
At church, when I used to play drums, we used to do all the click tracks with the MPC 2000 XL. So I learned that at church when I was just running all the click tracks, playing drums with that.
Gotcha.
So
I was gonna say, y'all flipping gospel records at church,
bro. Listen, if you
Man, I wish my church had an MPC.
listen,
Right.
if you listen to all those early Kirk Franklin records, all that's all MPC programs behind it.
Yeah.
So that's where we learned all that stuff. And then my first personal MPC was the 1000. Okay. Then I got a 2500, and then I left that and just went for the MV8000, and now I'm with the MPCX. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. So,
basically 1000 is a 2500 with bad pads. That's basically what that is. Yeah.
Well, I changed my pads too, man.
Okay.
So.
The 1000 had some things about it, man. Like because it was a
Ken's
dope.
I saw your whole video series on that, Ken.
Well, hold on. The 1000 was dope for the size factor, and like there was a lot about it that was really, really dope. Mm-hmm. But there was also factors about it that kind of like blew a lot of people's mind. That like we're trying to move from 2000 XLs, because you remember it was the direct successor to the 2000 XL. Mm-hmm. Even if product wise it was kind of a shift, it was still like the lower cost MPC, which the 2000 XL was. If you remember, like the 2000 series was the lower cost to the 3000. Even though it was newer, had waveform editing and all these new features, it was still lower cost. It kept coming down. And the 1000, I had a lot of members of my crew that to this day still rock those things. And the thing that drove me nuts was like, yo, no envelope per sample. Like that like shook me. Like when I got into the program and I was like, yo, there's no envelope. And I started like getting angry, and I start like hitting things, and I'm like, wait, no.
Good,
and then
bro,
you start.
My first MPC, ain't nobody know. I didn't know what no envelope was.
Yeah, I was like, what's an envelope? Some samples.
I was like,
well, yeah, but coming from a 2000 XL and coming from a and really, it was 2000 XL, and it was also ASRX. I was using those two at the same time.
That's
like,
my jam right there. I got mine over here, dude.
And yeah, I got my ASRX over there too. Don't make me get up and go grab stuff. You know how this show goes.
Yeah.
Come on. But no, the thing about it to me was like I was so excited about something so small because I used to do really stupid stuff. Like I would get a power inverter and bring my MPC 2000 XL in my car and make beats in my car.
Why did you say used to? Like you don't still do that with the Ford?
Used to. That was him the other day with a modular skiff and driving at the same time.
Well, my point being is that this thing was more compact and it had more power, so I was excited. But then when I saw the operating system, I was really let down by the operating system. And then the JJOS thing hadn't fully fleshed itself out yet. Like that took a long time for the JJOS thing to really play itself out. And even so, it's still like you still have to kind of like look at it. And you know, Corey and I, like we know the actual full backstory behind it. But it was like, you know, from the outside looking in at that point, like it was really confusing for Akai users to be like, yo, like, what do you mean I gotta like pay extra money to some random dude to get a proper set of features? And Akai's hands were tied.
I got something I want to throw in here. Ken mentioned taking gear outside of the house, so maybe we can segue into the smaller MPCs, like the more portable joints. Yeah.
So what are the more portable ones though? The 5000, the 1000. I honestly would throw the 100 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, 500 is what I meant, not the 5000. Obviously,
like 5000. That joint wasn't portable. That's like
y'all are leaving out the best portable MPC ever.
What the XT? What's the name of that?
IMPC.
Oh yeah.
But we haven't got to the section where we talk about MPC
that's more modern though. So
it's more modern, but I'm just saying, like you can't sleep on the fact that like for portability wise, like that's pretty amazing.
Yo, remember when they hit you with that Elements though?
Yo, that was bad. I highly recommend anybody out here check out Rod's video. So Rod's channel, I want to say it's Dark Manifestations, which is
that sounds evil.
This is way back. Rod is an evil dude.
Don't spell it wrong.
Well,
when Rod did a video on MPC Fly, and it is hilarious. Like, you got to see it because he was.
But we want to
upset.
to the classic MP, the standalone MPC specifically, right now. That could come into when you start talking about the Ren Studio and the Fly, or the whatever the hell else they had at that point that was only controllers.
Go ahead and say it. You want to stick to hardware? Just say it. Be a big boy.
Standalones, which means even newer ones because they can operate standalone.
So part of one of my loves for the 2500 was it was one of the first ones with USB MIDI.
And I didn't realize that.
And
that was huge. That was huge. And the file transfer.
And the file transfer, because it was USB for MIDI, for file transfer, and it still had the smart media card. So there was a bunch of ways you can get samples in and out. Also, that's the one that I had it modded with the big tilt screen. The big tilt screen on
you could get the mod on it.
That joint. It just
hold on. Let's not forget though. The 3000 you could hook to the PC screen too.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but for me, these are the things that made me fall in love with the.
Wait a minute, that just blew my mind. Since when? Is that the truth? The 3000 goes to a computer screen? I can't believe I didn't know that.
You got to get the card for it. But I think
card for it.
But if I'm not mistaken, the 2500 actually adds, like, it takes up the real estate in a smart way. Like, it shows you a bunch more things, where the 3000 is just a bigger version of what's on the screen.
Yeah. And JJ released a specific OS for the modded screens too.
Exactly.
Right. So you get like your mixer levels and all that stuff.
And that's what made it super special for me. And that actually the JJOS on the 2500 was the first time I ever experimented with step sequencing. And I was
so the question
go ahead.
I was gonna ask Ricky. Look, have you ever had one of the portable MPCs? So I would put that in the category of the 500, and what was the small version of the Ren?
The small with the studio, but that was the standalone.
That wasn't portable. You needed a laptop for that joint.
I'd say the 1000 was still pretty portable. I have the
1000 and the Live are realistically, the 1000, the Live, and the 500 were realistically they're portable ones that are standalone. That's all that we're gonna count in this stream as their true portable ones. Okay.
And
then everything else we'll say falls under the category of a hybrid or a software unit. You know.
I have the 1000 with the JJOS and it's fucking awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that's fire.
The other issues that we can get into is build quality, because honestly, one of the problems with the 1000 was that, coming from 2000 XL to the 1000, first, if you were an early adopter of a 1000, you had broken pads, period. There wasn't an early 1000 that didn't get broken pads.
It's true. So many people had that problem.
The new Malaysia factory.
Much later on, and that's because they completely changed the sensor array. It became these individual carbon pads, and they cracked. And then later on, they came out with a single sheet, and then, of course, there's like the MPC stuff upgrades, which are fantastic, by the way. The fat pad upgrade for that. If you have an MPC 1000 and you don't do the fat pad upgrade and the sensor upgrade, you're missing out, because it's a massive change.
Really?
I've been
anti-fat pads forever. I don't know why.
No. So
have you tried that though?
So you have original pads?
Yeah, on all my MPCs.
But have you tried it on the 1000? Because the difference on the 1000 is massive.
My John Tejada, he has a 1000 with fat pads on it, and it felt really good. I was always afraid that I would start getting double triggers or something weird.
What the problem was?
I tell you, it's night.
What the problem was with double triggers? A lot of times, at first, when the fat pads came out, they were selling the cork sensitivity upgrade with them,
right?
And so most people were installing the fat pads with the cork sensitivity.
And I found that it didn't need the corks.
It didn't need them. It needed. So I bought them, put it on, and then realized, like, yo, this is janky. It's messing me up.
So I did the 2 pieces of electrical tape under the pads on my 4000.
A lot did that.
So I did that I did that before I was like I was like, man, I got to be legit and buy it. So I did the electrical tape on. I even did it on my MPD 32, and that was night and day with that too.
Really,
Dope.
really,
Yeah.
okay.
Dope.
Yeah, I did the fat pad upgrade on my MPD 32. Yeah,
Man.
So I'll say this though, the buttons on the 1000 drove me more nuts than anything else. The actual tack buttons, because those switches
On the 1000?
Yeah, they're really bad. And like a lot of them, I mean, I can't tell you how many 1000s I've worked on, and it's like you gotta like break your fingertips like pressing them in. And I even seen it in Ricky's videos where I could see you, I could see your fingers like,
Yeah.
and you don't say nothing about it. And I'm like,
on the
I knew his fingers hate him.
Yeah,
It's just so funny you like get used to it, because on my 1000 I think it's like my F1 button needs to be pressed in like the top right and kind of pushed down.
Yeah,
And, like,
it's like those movies where you see a guy with an old car and he's like loving on the side of the dashboard and smacks it one way and then it starts. That's kind of how working a 1000 is.
Well,
so if your 1000 went out, Ricky, you go try to cop another one.
Yeah, I still really like it, because before that I was using, I had the 1000, didn't really get it. I didn't have the JJOS. I got a 4000. It made perfect sense to me. And then I got a 1000 and got the JJ, and I was like, oh man, this is a 4000 just tiny. Like I still have all the amount of crazy weird features, envelopes and effects and all this stuff, and I really like it. And then I borrowed an MPC Live, the newer one, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but I still preferred the 1000. The 1000 is heavy as hell.
Is it compared to Live?
I think
that joint is heavy.
Yeah, especially when you consider that one has a battery and like all this other stuff on it. You know, it's like, oh man, yeah, the 1000 is live. But even then, like the 3000 looks tiny to me compared to my 4000 and my 60. I was like, oh my god, I could take this with me everywhere. But it's still pretty big, you know.
But you don't get that 96K though from that. That thing.
Yeah.
That's for me, when I was working on the 4000, man. That was my first experience with hearing things like sampling in high resolution, and not high resolution, high sample rate. And I was just like, "What the heck is happening?" When I pitch my samples down, I'm not losing low end. What the heck is happening now?
I feel like the 4000 was the last real like studio pro top level.
Yes.
It was the last real flagship. The X kind of brought that back a little bit, but still it doesn't interface.
Things, right?
It doesn't interface in the same way, and there's a lot of missing things there compared to what the 4K was. The 4K, the biggest gripe that I see from a lot of people is just that the ease of use compared to a lot of the other MPCs, like it was, because it was a much more professional instrument and could do so much more, there was a much bigger learning curve, whereas the 2000 and the 1000 and the 2500, it was much more focused, you know?
Well, let me tell you, I ran into, I don't know, Ricky, this was a while ago, a couple years ago, we ran into each other at Perfect Circuit, and we were back there talking, and I was at that point thinking of how I could take two MPCs out and perform. I wanted to perform with two MPCs and a DJ mixer and do stuff. That was before I got the Force and realized I could just perform with this the way I wanted to. But anyway, Ricky, you was telling me you came up on a 4000 for like an incredible deal at one point, right?
Yeah, so it's actually the 4000 I have now, because I do this to myself all the time, where it's like I know what works and I know how I make my best music, but I don't want to accept it, and I constantly want to chase gear, you know. So then I'm like, I had a 4000, and then I got the Octatrack, and I was like, cool, I don't need the 4000, and I've never regretted selling something so immediately. And then I got another 4000, sold that again, and then I got this one for a really good deal. I think it was like $350. But the pads were crazy.
Where'd you buy that? Because I got one for $250 in Portland.
Oh dang! I got mine from Craigslist.
Dude, I got mine in a pawn shop in Portland.
I remember when that happened too. Because you hit us up
with a hard shell flight case, everything.
You hit us up and you were like, "You'll never believe this."
That's crazy, bro.
That was recent. Like that was not that long ago.
For that.
Yeah, it was wild too because I think it was originally like 380, and I hit him up, and then the pads didn't work when I got it home, and I was just like, "Hey, the pads don't work," and he's like, "Oh, let me shoot you another like $40 or whatever, or $30 to buy the pads." I was like, "Okay, cool." And since I got it for so cheap, I was like, "Okay, to make sure I don't make the same mistake I make every time and sell this thing, let me just throw a bunch of money at it and fully upgrade it." So
fully up a restoration.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
So what you
That's dope.
The internal drive, I got new pads, new sensors. What else? I maxed out the RAM. I got a new effects
Dope.
card because like one of the effects were kind of busted on there. But
Man, that thing got put through the ringer.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
you
then it's
really
like
gave it the juice.
I gave it all this crazy stuff, and it still came out to
buggy.
like $700.
So
Right.
was that,
Buggy
was
after
that
that,
your
or what?
studio? Was that your studio MPC before the 3000?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the main one.
Okay.
And the thing about the 4000 that a lot of people don't realize, and we'll kind of just lightly touch on this. So the 4000 had the Z96 sampler in it, and that sampler was really was Akai's flagship sampler. So that was like the top
Which
end
was weird
rack
that
mount
they left
sampler
it
that you
there.
could get. And
Yeah.
well, that was also after that Giga sampler came out and kind of like everything went PC after that. But so that was like, not only was it a flagship MPC, but it was like they were taking their flagship rack mount sampler and putting it in this box and doing all that stuff with it. The 5000 that came out after that was originally not supposed to be the 5000. We've done, and Corey and I have done interviews with Glenn, who was the project lead on that. But that was originally meant to be the 3500, which was meant to not be a replacement for the 4000, but rather be, again, kind of like how the the 1000 stepped down from the 2000. It was meant to be a spiritual successor to the 3000, not the 4000. And then the name got switched to 5000 at the last minute by the head
Which
of
kind
Akai.
of was part of the reason that it took some darts that it didn't really deserve. You know what I mean? Because you know it was the 5000. So you thinking, yo, if the 4000 is this, then the 5000 levels up and really was stripped down.
But what was interesting about that was what that
buggy.
showed. What that also showed was that the head of Akai didn't really know the legacy of the product, of his own product.
Wait,
You know?
but here, there was also a shift in culture at that time too. So it's like DAWs were becoming accessible.
True.
Yeah.
And Machine was becoming super popular.
Yeah, so there's things that were changing. Like we've literally seen MPCs go from MIDI production centers to music production centers.
Yeah, and that happened in the 4000, right?
Yeah.
When they changed the name.
So we saw the shift. And I think that's where we saw the shift happening in the machines. They're like, well, we're not going to give you these features because you can kind of do this externally or whatever the case
I'll
is.
say this. I get really irritated.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that it's right, Ken. And I know you're
No.
irritated.
What I'm getting irritated about is the mentality that you could suggest that by changing the name from MIDI Production Center to Music Production Center means that the MIDI should become any less, because that really doesn't mean that. It just means that you should keep your MIDI as awesome as it is and include more. Okay?
I think that's more of a
that's more of a Ken's philosophy.
You know what? I wish.
Well, apparently it's not. If you read the forums now and you see how angry people are that you don't have multi-timbral MIDI in the new MPCs.
I feel you.
Well,
but
hold right there.
You can do multi-timbral stuff in the DAW.
I'm gonna smash a bottle right now.
I wish this streaming platform had like a button where I could just reference the episode where Ken did the drunken rant about MPC MIDI, and we could just leave it over there.
You know what? I just need an air horn right now.
Ken was on some bourbon and ranting on that day.
He was standing up and running around in his room and everything. Like, all right,
I don't know if I was. I think I was just pissed off.
Well, yeah, and the only reason I bring the culture shift is because that's when I was becoming very heavily involved in production for artists, and I saw that I can come in with my 2500 and my Pro Tools M-powered system and have a full setup and not really need a lot of the things that I used to do in the 2000 XL or in the so it was easy. It was easier for me to make albums and make songs, and rather than like very quick, rather than have to track out from the MPCs, go into song mode, do all this other stuff. When I was just creating music in a whole different way. And that's why I have empathy towards people that are not like Ken. They were like, yo, we don't care about that MIDI stuff. Like, we just want to make, want to print and keep going. So I get it. The both sides of the coin.
The game changed a lot at that point.
Yeah,
the game just changed a lot. And I think through these MPCs, we've seen all these different iterations of the game, because I think it's worth noting too that you had a big shift, 4,000 to 5,000, and then it kind of took a backseat to Native Instruments machine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
then certainly when they got in there and they got to a point, a couple of revisions of the software up, then they said, now you can open your MPC programs. And then it's like MPC forums almost went dead overnight.
Man. So Corey, let me ask you this. The 5,000, okay, did you have a 4,000?
I was at an intersection where I was trying to choose between a 4,000 and an MV 8800, and then my wife bought me the 5,000 for Christmas. And so
I had that.
Okay, so that kind of
MV too. That MV though,
that kind of leads to my next question, because you had one of the topics was the elusive MPC. So for me, it was the 4,000 for sure.
It's still the 4,000 for me.
Yep, same here.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I've used them quite a bit, and I was always jealous of St. Joe because he had the 4,000. So I'm probably going to say that. But the flip side of me is kind of like the other elusive MPC isn't even the MPC. It's that MV 8800, man. Yep. Like I still want that.
I love that joint. That joint, it had this synth engine in it.
It had the bass synth in it, and you could share patches with the 8800.
That joint was cold, and it had
the MV gets slept on. And I remember, and this is where we get back to that whole machine feel thing, because I remember people used to gripe about the quantization and PPQ on that thing and saying, oh, it's not the same and blah blah blah, when it was a higher resolution and it was tighter. And people just had shitty timing, and they were like, how come my shitty timing isn't being fixed?
Because it's shitty timing. That's why it's not being fixed.
Right. It's too accurate.
But you see, that's one of the things too, Ken, that when I got the MV8000, I felt how sensitive it was to timing. And I started to actually apply more of my drummer thinking to the way that I program my beats. Because I'm like, wait, I could actually flex on this joint more than I do on an MPC. Like with timing, I could do more micro shifting and more like
going off grid and keeping things locked at the same time.
That makes sense.
So that was the era where I started to actually go off grid, because I believe it was 1999, 2000. Before that, I was making beats more like Primo, Large Pro. Once I heard Dilla and then got my MV8000, it totally changed the way I made music. And
so Rickey, just out of curiosity, do you have an elusive MPC, one that you just, I mean, you pretty much have all of them at this point?
I think one that kind of struck my curiosity, but not necessarily was like unobtainium, would be the 500. Just because it seems, I'm curious, what makes me interested in it is its limitations. Have like 12 pads. Like, would that actually change the way I do things?
Yes.
Or like,
So it's interesting you say that, Rickey, because I literally last week or the week before, some people have been like, there's been a lot of conversation about the MPC 500 lately, and I don't know if it's just stuff that's coming up in my feed. It's been coming up. It's
funny because I tease Glenn about the 500 all the time.
It actually came up on the show.
I'm like, don't ever talk to me about that 12-pad MPC.
It came up on a show, and Glenn was like, yo, that's cool that they gave props to the 5,000. And I mean, the 500, I keep saying 5,000, but yeah, the 500 is like one of those things right now where people like, yo, that's the joint. I've actually heard somebody say that it's like an MPC 60 pocket size.
Yo, I had a 500.
I've never had. What was the OS like, Bryce?
Man, it was all, no waveforms at all.
The screen was kind of like the 60 and the
exactly.
It's number editing.
All editing by numbers, exactly.
But what was
it was
sampling
dope.
like? What was the
But the
sampling
sequencer
like?
on it was fairly nice, if I
Yeah,
recall.
it was just like probably like the 2500. I can't recall any differences between the 2500.
Damn.
So-
But it was dope, man. Just
would
having a
you-
small, tiny little MPC, man.
Yeah.
Would you
it was
compare
dope.
that to if I were to compare it to something super modern like Digitac versus Model Cycles, like what would you compare it to a big MPC?
To me, it was like having an MPC 2500 with 12 pads with no waveform editing.
Okay.
Damn.
That's what it was pretty
I'm
much
telling
like.
you, that's the kind of stuff I've been saying. When I interviewed Rashid Hadi on the B-Boy Tech interview one-on-one series, he was talking about the MPC 500, and especially when he travels, because he was like, it's less intrusive to the people around you, and you get less interruptions.
Absolutely.
And being the
now,
naysayer that I am, like the 12 pad thing is an immediate issue for me because I prefer to chop per beat in division as opposed to like I don't want 12 tone intonation kind of chopping, like I want division chopping. And for me, that's where like the like a big mental issue with that comes in.
Are you not
and then
willing
you
to
could say
compromise, Ken?
but the sequence, don't you ever talk to me about compromise.
Are you not willing to change your ways?
And then
Are
you got to
you
think
not-
about
do
all the
you
guys
not know
using, But then you got to think about all the guys using 12 pads on the SP404. You know what I mean? So it's not a big deal.
That was kind of it too. It was like a combination of things. It was one, really getting into the 404, and then two, really getting into the 60, where on the 4000, chopping by the beat or by quarters or sixteenths was beyond easy. That I didn't consider it any other way. But when I got the 60 or the 3000, I was like, oh my God, to make 16 chops, it's going to take fucking forever. Like, I'm going to just pick the sounds that I actually want.
Yeah.
And then in that, I found new chops that were like in between those that I wouldn't have got because I would have just blown past that process. So that's when I was like, the 500 might be kind of tight to like.
Yeah. So for me, the 500, it was dope. It did have limited polyphony. I remember that was an issue too. That was one of the things. Now that I'm thinking back, that was one of the things. But man, when I got the 500, I had the 2500 and the 500. And I remember posting on MPC forums. I'm like, man, yo, everybody, I just got my 500. I'm going to go to Starbucks and make beats. And everybody just like, you idiot. You going to go to the coffee shop. And like, they just hit me. I was like,
you was pre-buster right there.
People don't like this one.
I was like, yo, I want to get out and just experience life and be out here making beats. And everybody's man,
that's equivalent to like that.
You can go find that thread.
That's equivalent to when Rona first came out. That person that was going out just coughing on people. That's basically what happened to you.
Yeah. Hey, you can go find that thread. I'm guaranteeing you, it's in that MPC 500 thread. I hit everybody up. I was like, man, I got the 500, and I posted a picture. I made a custom case for that joint. Like, I was. Yeah,
the 500 did get hate when it first came out. It was like, who's this my first MPC situation?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yo, look, if I had the 500, if that was my first joint, I think it would have been cool, man. Like, cause just the fact that y'all telling me it had all that functionality in it, but it just had 12 pads. Come on, son.
Yeah.
There's this dope MPC producer on YouTube named Martin.
He's dope. He's real dope.
Yeah,
he's heavy on the 500. That was his first, and then I think he moved to the 2000 XL.
2000 XL. Yep.
But he's still like 500 is one of the best ones.
If you like raw, like old school boom bap hip hop, like definitely check his channel. It's Martin, and I think it's spelled with 2 A's.
Where's he from? He's from overseas, right?
He's from some like European country or Eastern European country or something. But he's dope. Like I genuinely enjoy his music. Like
he's really good.
doing.
I have an interesting question, and this is something. So, MPCs being associated with hip hop, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yep.
So
that polka hop.
So like you guys not freaked out, but you guys were like, oh, you were using it in the gospel stuff? Yeah, I was using it in that stuff. And the guy that taught me how to use MPC was a house producer.
I was just about to bring up was house.
Yep. So it's just like for me, the context that I saw the MPC in was way bigger than hip hop for me personally.
That's dope.
Because
That's dope.
like
Yeah.
I was like I remember.
But wait. That ain't. Don't be saying way bigger. It was broader. It was a broader perspective. But
Yeah,
hip hop.
okay,
You can't just be
broader,
saying bigger than hip hop.
Okay. Well, Corey, you know, if you know me, you know that my life is.
I know.
It's way different. You know, I'm doing
You're
quartet jazz.
international
stuff.
gentleman of
Yeah,
leisure.
I'm doing
the
quartet jazz
thing.
stuff with MPC. So that's kind of like the weird. So when I saw the context of the way MPCs were being used by the community that I was learning from, I was like, whoa, this machine is so diverse that it is like
it is.
Like, dude, I saw this drum and bass guy performing with he had an MC 202 and an MPC 2000 XL. It was one of the nuttiest performances I ever saw in Washington Square Park in New York City. I was like, yo, this is wild. And then I saw somebody with an MPC and an MC 909 doing a whole set with that.
That's it. I was just about to
Together.
start talking MC 909
And
because
I'm
that's what opened me up was when we used to. So what we used to do was in my area. It started out. There was a bunch of local producers, and there was you pretty much either had like an ASRX or a ASR 10, a EPS, or an MPC, and that was kind of it. And FL Studio was still Fruity Loops at the time, and was
FL
like
Studio's
just kind of coming on the scene. So like you were getting some kids were kind of like just playing with it. You had
Notice how he calls them
MTV
kids?
Music Generator was just coming on the scene.
Oh, that was fire too.
And I'm really not even down talking MTV Music Generator because that put a lot of kids on to beat making, right?
I've been talking to a lot of beat makers lately that basically taught them how to produce.
Yeah,
that was my first joint. Yep.
And honestly, you could sample.
Yeah, all you gotta do
Yeah,
is put the CD in, load it into RAM.
I use
and
that
then
joint.
chop
Like,
that joint up.
But
Man.
so the thing
that.
was though, like we used to a lot of the crew in my area, it was a DJ battle crew that was like primarily in my area and called Crate Kickers, and we used to go to this club in the inner city and. It was beautiful because it was DJ Shorty T, who's
I'm sorry when you said Crate Kickers. I just thought about how old y'all was. Like I was just like, damn. I'm like, damn. That sound like
yes,
my
we're
dad's
old school vinyl heads. Okay, leave us alone.
Damn, Crate Kickers.
So
Y'all was out here kicking crates.
I gotta say a big shout out to Shorty T, right? So we would go to this club called Ambrosia out in Wilmington, and so we. You know, all the DJs were setting up their turntables and they were teaching each other how to scratch techniques. It was a real dope setting. And I used to go there and just check it out because I was learning to scratch too, but I wasn't even on their level. And I was just like, yo, would you mind if I brought my beat making machine? Like, let me make beats for you while y'all are practicing and all. And they were like, yeah. So, like, I would come through doing that. And then a whole crew of beat makers started coming through. And then a kid came through with a 909, an MC 909, and it was like way different workflow. And it just like, you know, step editing and, you know, like step programming and all this stuff. And it had turntable emulation on it and all this weird stuff. But there were certain things that it couldn't do that the MPC could do. And it was just like, at that point I was like, well, now I have to have like every sampler.
It was like the steps. It was like the step. It was like the step sequencer. Focused version of the MV8000, the MC 909.
Right. So check this out, though. So let me tell you. I want to D what you said about the genre thing. I definitely want to call that out. Obviously, I'm joking about the hip hop thing. I respect all genres of music and stuff. Yep. But the thing is, growing up in Chicago, like there was a lot of house producers that I had to realize after a while, like, yo, they use this, house producers use this just as much as hip hop dudes. And then, you know what kind of blew my mind? It's just I never thought of it. Is that when I started finding out how many R&B producers were making slow songs with the MPC, and it just, to me, it just kind of like, it's weird that you just don't have that connection.
But was a lot of that because the sequencer was so dope with MIDI? There was no other sequencer that was touching it.
I was just about to say MIDI production.
To this day.
That's it. Yep.
Right? Yeah. I'm saying like so it makes me I get upset with myself because I get so upset at other drum machines that can't sequence external MIDI as well as the MPC, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, because that was an MPC.
In defense of those drum, I was about to say, I was like, Ken, don't be bringing that up because some things are just drum machines. They're not,
I know, but like the MPC it was a revelation to music production. Like really, because before that you had like the Yamaha QYs, and you had like so like you had these like individual arranger sequencers, but when the MPC came along and did that, it just wiped everything out. I mean, it just blew everybody's mind.
I totally agree with you with that, but I also don't like judging everything based off of an MPC. Like other products.
Everything should be held to that standard.
No, it's not fair. I don't think it's fair.
It's not fair at all. But guess what? Evolve.
But if you're making a drum machine, it doesn't have to be a MIDI sequencer.
I agree.
Right.
I love my Drum Brute Impact. I use that thing all the time.
But even to that point, I saw my homie DJ Merlin in the chat. He mentioned this, and we talk about this all the time, of how much the MPC has actually like completely changed the way products are even made to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's just like you see its DNA in every product today. It's like, oh yeah, they do this the way you do it on MPC, or like, oh yeah, they set up the pads like an MPC. It's like, you know, there's
it's the golden standard.
It's the same way Electron has changed, has evolved step sequencers.
Yeah, absolutely. Even then, the Octatrack made by Daniel Troberg, we talk all the time about MPC 4000s. And when I made that connection, I understood the Octatrack so much more of how its banks and parts work is exactly the same as multis and programs in the 4000. And I was just like, oh my God. Even in this crazy new Electron thing, there's still MPC DNA in this. But they can take that and then like run with it in their own direction.
They need to put some more of that MPC DNA in, because the fact that I got a slice spot with LFOs,
I find it really.
I'll be getting mad as hell. Like Digitac, please put a slice mode. Just please, I'll pay somebody.
I find anybody looking at an Electron workflow.
Your kids.
If you're looking at an Electron unit and you're like, oh, this is going to replace an MPC, they are so polar opposites. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying they are so polar opposites. It's like,
they're just different.
It's almost like two aliens coming, and interacting. They just totally different vibes.
It's exactly. I made that mistake when I had my first 4000. I got the Octatrack and I was like, "Cool, don't need the 4000 anymore."
Nope.
Sold it, and like as soon as I shook the dude's hand, I was like, "Oh my God, I made the biggest mistake."
And even if you look at the Ensoniq stuff, so the main competitor to the 2000 and 2000 XL at the time was the ASRX. And even though those two products are extremely different, and in some ways the ASR was far superior in the fact that like you could have built-in sounds, and you had the effects were way better and that sort of thing, but the sequencer didn't really hold up against the MPC. But the thing is like even though they were so different, they were still very similar in the way that they functioned. Whereas you look at an Electron gear and it's like, man, you just crossed an ocean. Like things are totally different over here,
Yo, so guys, I know we don't have too much time left, so I want to jump on one thing real quick before this is all over. What were some of the MPC failures? We've been hyping up MPC right now.
Right.
We've been going in. Ooh. Where did they fail? Give me some of your
tiny ass screens.
I think they failed when they went to what was a bigger failure than the MPC, or not the IMPC, but the MPC Fly.
The Fly was bad.
Gosh,
that was just a lot of that was bad hardware design. Like the
what
pads
was the
just
Fly?
weren't sensitive.
I remember the Fly.
It was an iPad case that had pads in it.
Oh,
for the iPad, yeah.
Akai's biggest fail was the Rhythm Wolf.
Well, if you're going to talk about all of Akai, I would say
the Tomcat sounds better than the Rhythm Wolf to me.
The Timber.
That's true.
The Timber Wolf might be worse. I don't know.
Actually, their biggest mistake was that photo right there of getting rid of Roger Linn.
Yeah, well, there it is.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good one.
One of their most slept on things, though, and I still use it to this day, is the Miniac.
Miniac, but that was still the Micron. That was the Micron.
I still use.
And if anybody's hating on the Micron, come at me, bro. Like that engine is dope. I don't care what anybody says. I love that.
Just go for the legs because his legs are weak.
No, they're not, man. Well, okay, yeah, it is. I got broken ankles. Leave me alone.
Hey, Corey, I'm looking at at a picture of Rickey and then a picture of you, both with Roger Linn. I'm like, man, is this a cutout of Roger Linn, or did you guys?
Yeah, this is weird, right?
What is this, like a cardboard cutout? Or?
What is up with your facial expressions, yo? That's like, yo, I'm gangster, but I gotta use the bathroom at the same time.
Yo, what's funny is like he's smiling in the pictures with y'all, and the picture with me, I'm like yelling at him about the Tempest.
I was like, man, wait, is this a cardboard cutout of Roger Linn?
Right.
Yo,
they just kind of
he's
stepped in front of it.
He's at the Bob Hope Airport. You could go take a photo whenever you want.
He just stands over there as long as you bring the MPC 62, you get a picture.
Right.
That's mad. Yo, that's mad. For Corey, yo, your face is like the kid that's like taking a school photo. Like,
you know, there's a story behind that, man. I really shouldn't have been out that night. I was so tired.
No, man.
I hadn't had an off day of 2 weeks, and I heard Roger Linn was coming the day he was coming.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope, man. That's really, really dope.
So I went, but yeah. And you know, that day, that was a dope day too, because when I was there, I ran into my man Radius.
Joe.
Radius, etc. He was
sick,
there. Yeah, and that's my man from Chicago, and he's a prolific MPC 1000. And I ran into him there. We went to have veggie burgers after that. So
that sounds like a dope ass story. Like, yo, we talk about MPCs doing these veggie burgers.
Epic.
Straight up.
That's a Charlie Murphy story right there. Like, yeah.
But you know what else happened tonight? House Shoes was there.
Oh,
so this was funny. I didn't know Radius was in town until I went down there. Like I said, I heard it last minute, and then I saw House Shoes was there. Then Radius came in and chilled with House Shoes. And when I stood up to take the picture, the other side of Roger Linn in that picture is Radius. I got to find the real one. And
you know, you cut him out.
I did. I cut him out.
Ex-girlfriend. He was like,
he's like, man, you don't know.
It wasn't no malice, though. It wasn't no malice. But there's a picture of the three of us in that same picture on here. But what's interesting is somebody else brought their MPC up there, but it was one of the later MPCs where Roger Linn had left. And I remember House Shoes was like, House Shoes was like, you know, Roger Linn want to say, get that shit out of here.
Yeah,
that's funny.
That's mad funny.
Yo, I got a question. Steele, I know you got to go soon, but I wanted to get this question into everybody. So, what was a piece of music, you know, that was really based around the MPC that kind of blew your mind and like really inspired you? Maybe it was before, maybe it was after you had an MPC, whatever, but like what was an MPC based piece of music that really just kind of like set you off?
Yo, I want to answer this real quick. Kev Brown, when I saw Kev, me personally, the thing that made me want to get an MPC was when I saw Kev Brown chopping samples. I know everybody's seen that.
Yeah.
Kev Brown
Low
chopping
budget.
samples on the MPC. That's what made me, because before that I had I was using the SP, I think like 808 or something like, or some Roland sampler. But when I saw that, I was like, man, I need to move over to a MPC because it had auto chop. So anyway,
By
that's
the way,
guys, my 2 cents.
If you guys don't have it, go get Soul Provider. 1 and 2 is a sound pack that MSX Audio did with Kev Brown for Akai. So if you haven't gotten that, just go get it. It's dope.
Man, okay.
For me, it was 2 albums. It was Welcome to Detroit by JD.
Yeah.
And Slum Village Fantastic Volume 2.
Oh, I love that one.
So when I heard those albums, I was like, what the heck? And especially when I heard the way he flipped that Herbie Hancock sample, and then he flipped, what was the other joint? Patrice Russin sample. I was like, yo, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Like what is happening right now? And then he flipped that Don Blackman sample, that for Go Ladies, Go. Yo, I was like, yo, this dude is an alien. And then I started to like learn about what he was like making music on, and how Dwele was playing bass and horns and all this. He was sampling all that into the MPC and rearranging it. And the song Little Brother by Black Star, the way Dilla chopped up that sample.
Yo, that Roy Ayers sample, right? That's what it was,
a Roy
right?
Ayers sample, and I was just like, Okay.
That was stupid. And he would call that practice. He said, I was just doing that because Pete Rock had chopped it up and I just wanted to practice by taking between the vocals and put it back together like a puzzle
That was
piece.
gorgeous.
Yeah, so those were the two albums for me, and that song that was like, oh man, I need to really study my MPC because I want to be able to do that and more. And at the same time, I was also listening to a lot of music from Europe that was way different than the stuff that was happening in America. Like, what's the name of that rapper? What's that? Not Europe. He's Anti-Pop Consortium.
Oh, yeah, Beans.
I was listening to this dude called Ty from Canada. Cardinal Official, all these Canadian.
Cardinal Official, dope. You brought that one back.
This whole era where like the MPC was dominant, right?
Cardinal Official was Canada, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was Canadian.
Yeah.
Him and Socrates.
Man, I haven't heard that name in a minute.
Yeah, him, Socrates, Chaos, all those dudes from out there.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
But that's broken social scene out there, dude. Anyway, so that whole era is what made me fall in love with beat machines, and that was also the beginning of the Beat Society. That was
Beat Society started in my backyard.
Yeah, so it was just that era where production was, and I don't want to say this in a weird way, but it was really where it was being highlighted as an individual art form, work of art that every producer was using the same piece of gear but expressing themselves completely different.
Yeah.
So somebody's feeling you on YouTube, D. They said, yo, Socrates. Is that how you say it? Socrates?
Socrates, man.
Socrates. Right. Okay, yo. My bad.
Like, yo,
Socrates.
You listen to Socrates? Yeah, I'm here on the show with,
yo, I can't wait to talk about that on Marco Polo later.
I'm here on the show with Rickey Tinez talking about Socrates.
Bryce, that one's coming at you later.
Okay, I don't know who he is, but it's spelled with a K. That's not how Socrates is spelled.
Yo, Socrates sound like a Greek.
These Socrates kind of salty though, for real.
Yeah, Socrates.
Yo, these Socrates is delicious.
Yeah, Socrates.
He sound like a Greek pimp. Like, come here, baby. Socrates.
Yo, and J-Pog says everything Dilla, man. The way he manipulates textures, filters. Yeah. And chops is insane.
So check this out. Sure. The same way Dilla was for MPCs is the way that Mad Lib is for like SPs. Like the 404s, the 303s, the 202s. So you really get to see how the vast like expression that could happen on these very simple or complicated samplers.
Amen. And I think that's a definite big part. Like, one thing I love about MPCs is that they feel limitless without getting in your way. Like they just kind of take you exactly where your brain's already headed.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Hey,
so
Ricky,
what about you, Ricky?
What's your album?
Yeah, I was going to ask him the same thing. What got you into MPCs?
It's definitely it's the Vintage Volume 2 by Dilla is really good. And then I always forget the track name. It's like "Don't Cry," where he flipped that weird from 3/4 to 4/4 back and forth on the 3000. I was like, how is he doing this? Like, I don't even understand it. And then when it comes to like a lot of the house cats, it's Detroit with like Omar S, Andreas, those dudes that do the whole sample. Detroit, Rick Wilhite does some stuff out there. Rick Wade. I'm not sure if they're fully MPCs, but I know Andreas is hardcore 2000 XL or 2000 user. And
oh wow, okay, yeah.
Before I forget, high tech.
Oh God, yes, one of my favorites.
Slept on. Super.
Yo, Corey, what about you, man? What about you, Corey? What turns you on to the MPC?
Well, I don't know. For me, it's not necessary. What turned me on the MPC were friends. I didn't know anything about. Like when my guy got an MPC, I knew what an MPC was. But as far as what made me want to really turn up the skill set was when I heard that Slum Village Volume 1 joint. Dude, I think that really made
that album was great too.
I looked at me and my buddies like, yo, bro, we ain't doing enough.
anything Dilla is just not so hard.
It is.
Yeah, that's dope.
For me, I gotta say, honestly, like there was a lot of stuff that came before this, like on earlier stuff, but this was the album that just like it kind of shook me to my core as to what a sampler could be, and I gotta say, DJ Shadow Introducing, like that album,
really good album
shook me to my core. Like I was so stunned by what he was able to achieve on that. And he was just using, I think he had 2 or 3 3,000s, and the fact that the entire album was nothing but a turntable and sampler, and that's it. And it was the first album to ever do that. And it oh my god, it was like, this is not a question. Like,
Turntable and sampler.
It was the first album that was 100% produced by samples.
Damn.
And
okay.
and it man, it blew my mind.
I don't know, man. What about Paul's Boutique though?
No, it was before that.
It was before that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I gotta
Paul's Boutique was also MCs and whatnot. This album, if you remember, introducing was not a vocal album. It was all instrumental.
Yeah, I got you on that.
And that album though, just like, wow, it just shook my brain around.
So let me ask you, this other thing is like and I don't know if we touched it. We touched a lot of stuff, but I want to know, like, what was kind of the bad rap MPC? Like, what was that MPC that got a bad rap that maybe
you should take this one, because you got a chip on your shoulder right now.
Thought. That was my thought. 5,000 should have never got the bad rap that it did. Once you get to the 2.0, a lot of stuff was fixed, and it still had its quirks and its bugs, but it was a solid joint for me. I rocked it for years, defiantly of people that would say, like, that's crap.
Yeah, you did. And you know what? That makes a good point, because people can talk all they want, but it's how you use the joint, right? Is really what it comes down to. The 2500 got a bad rap. And that was my first MPC, and cats were talking mad trash on that. But I loved it.
I loved it too. And
what was the main thing about it that you felt was kind of unwarranted? And this goes to both of you.
I feel like two things. It wasn't the 2000.
Someone's at the door real quick.
It wasn't the 2000 XL, but also the 2500 started to be associated with music that wasn't necessarily golden era hip hop.
Yeah, okay. For sure,
a lot of guys like
it was new.
Yeah, like A-Rab music was killing he was killing that joint.
Definitely.
Which for the record, his actual like studio beats were way cooler. Like, but they were dope.
But here's the thing, it's almost like, well, we went from golden era and there was like this like protection over MPCs. It's like, no, it will not be used by posers or anybody. But then when we started to see Manny Fresh on the MPC, and we started to see A-Rab music on the MPC, and we started to see all these guys that were a newer generation of hip hop, and it wasn't sounding like golden era, and this was the machine that was associated with the turning of the tide passing. It's just like a lot of that negativity was associated with like, this isn't a good beat machine, when the reality is like, yo, this joint, first of all, you don't got to pay for 8 outs on this joint. It comes with it.
Word.
You got USB.
I thought the design of it was actually dope. I actually like the layout of it a lot.
Yo, somebody brought up, they were hating on Swiss and the Triton. I was. But here's the thing, it's just like, when these machines started to become associated with the new era of the music that we hold so deep, that it wasn't sounding like Primo or Large Pro. It was sounding like the stuff that over 30 heads were not digging.
Right.
Yeah. And so a lot of that hate came from nostalgia, and a lot of the hate did come from technical aspects of the beat machine.
Yeah. Like the envelopes.
But that should never stop anyone from making dope music.
It also could do a lot of cool stuff too that the 2000 XL couldn't do. Because I remember being jealous of my boy. My boy Shiz had one, and the LFO stuff that you could do with it, I was like, damn, I want that. Like, yo. Because I remember he overused it on like every beat. And I was like, yo, I just want that.
You know what made me re-fall in love with the 2000 XL? So I was in LA, and I remember seeing Above the Clouds perform live with Exile, DJ Exile and Blue.
Yep.
And I seen DJ Exile doing all those scratch techniques and doing like some next level like finger drum and stuff on the MPC 2000 XL, which I know Ken's gonna be like, I've seen that before, whatever. But
Exile's dope, man. Like,
but
You won't catch me fronting on that.
But when I saw that, I was like, yo, this 2000 XL is incredible. Like, this thing is like.
Is it? Yeah. No, I like the 2000 or the 2500. Like, I think that thing's dope.
Yeah, it's
2000 XL was dope. Like,
I think MPC in general, like just the idea of the machine, is
you can't go wrong. Yeah,
you can't, like to make if you want to make music,
it is a
genre,
beautiful canvas.
And here's what's beautiful now, right? With these new MPCs, like the MPC X, I think about the fact that I can literally grab my bass guitar, condenser mics, mic up my drum set,
and go right on in
and track right in.
Yeah, and the audio quality is bananas.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I can track right in, and I have
the in the 5002, but it just sounds better on the newer MP, on this.
But here's the beauty. Here's the beauty. Okay. If I want to mix it, I can export to an Ableton session and just mix it in Ableton. Or the fact that I can use my iPad as an instrument and use Ableton Link and hook it up with my iPad and run instruments on there and sample it over Bluetooth. Like, all this stuff just blows my mind because it's still MPC. It's still a graduation of stuff that we couldn't do with the old hardware.
And luckily, there's still development going on.
I was just about to say the same thing.
And I will say, I was extremely hard to their face. To Dan and
we
seen Akai Dan and all.
We've seen the videos.
I've been very critical of them to their face. Like, I don't hide it, like, I'm passionate about it because I love the MP. Literally had the MPC 2000 XL in the room with me when my daughter was born. And when I say in the room with me, I don't mean like around the hospital. I mean in the room with me.
That's too much dedication. Bro.
Contaminating the whole place with just thinking.
No. Putting the funk in the room. I'm really not even playing. Like to me, like my MPC is like a family member. Like,
what's
for
the
real.
Name of this
and I know that's crazy,
Umbilical
but it's reality. Like, blood, sweat, and tears has been poured onto that thing. So I take it very seriously.
Beats.
But I'll say, like, I was extremely serious to those guys with, like, the whole REN and the whole software hybrid thing coming on. And I think that they've kind of turned the corner to where they really do listen to the people now. Like, I can honestly say I feel like they turned the corner and they listen to people and that their development
they have, and that's why they are where they are. That's why they are where they are today.
And that's why other companies have fallen off, because I feel like they stopped doing that.
Yeah, and then think about it's almost exponentially so, because to think about the market share that the Native Instruments had taken with Machine from Akai, and then anything else that was competing with Akai went out of being manufactured. You know what I mean? And the reason they were able to come back is because they listened to the people and they steadily, nonstop, uphill battle, listened, implemented.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, also acquisition is a huge part.
You ain't lying. Look at that BFD acquisition. Where's that going?
So that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes you got to take the L in time, right? And depend on your older machines that are still classics that could still be used today. And that's one thing that Akai had advantage over Native. It's like, well, they're putting out machine, but we still got classic beat machines that are still worth the money that they are. Like till this day. So you know what? Those guys aren't complaining.
I honestly feel like they got a little bit lucky with how lackadaisical and disrupted Native Instruments was. I feel like if Native Instruments kept their core team that they originally had and they focused on that, and it didn't become designed by committee, they could be a new classic in that way, and I feel like they kind of just got sloppy.
But I'm also not discrediting the fact that I use my MK3 all the time. My machine is
I do too, no doubt.
Gets turned on all the time. It's a great piece of gear, but
it has a workflow that's unrivaled.
So, this is where when we talk about failures, the one thing that Machine made me look at MPC as a failure is the fact that I can't touch a pad and play it chromatically right away.
Yeah, that's
16 levels.
That's huge.
Right. So, like, let's say if I have a keyboard controller hooked up to my
You don't have to create a key group.
I don't have to create a key group. In Machine, they're one and the same. Like the sampler is the key group. And we also see that We also see that in Ableton. We see that so that's a very like new school way of thinking of the way that a sampler is integrated within something. And
Corey, do you still have that black and yellow MPC? I was looking at it on the screen.
I do not have it, and it's funny because the site that I just found it on, because I just wanted to show it and talk about the customizations, but I don't want to get into it because we're going to end up.
I know we're getting ready to close out.
But I just want to show it right quick to let people know, like the whole mods and customization thing. This was my MPC 5000, and like on this site that I just found it on, and I never heard of this site. I think it's called Worth Point. So what's MPC worth? And this description says something to the effect of, this is a very well-known MPC around the internet. It's referred to as the Bumblebee MPC. Like that was my choice that I customized, and it was inspiring to me. And it actually was the first customized MPC 5000. And after that, MPC stuff, I think after that, like I painted all of that stuff.
Oh, I know. I remember. Yeah.
And, yeah, but it was a good process, and it was so endearing to me. It sparked creativity, man. So I think that's another thing that's good about MPCs. Like even if you do something as simple as the knobs changed, or some people that went and got the screens,
panels.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm shocked you kind of sold that. Do you regret selling it, or
no, I don't regret selling it because I got to a point where I honestly outgrew it. It got to a point where my workflow was flooding the memory to a point, like it took 5 years, but I got to a point where I was crashing that joint and starting to lose music because of the way I was sampling everything in, and it just didn't have the muscle.
Also, if you know Tory, he don't ever turn off his gear.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. That's one of the things that the MPC taught me, was because I was aware of the MPC 2000 XL screen issue. That if you leave the screens on for too long, the glue will start to dry out and separate. Man. So I got into the habit very early on of shutting my MPC off. This is my baby. That's a little secret there. Shift trim is a quick panic to shut sound off on that. But yeah, so this thing, man, has been with me through thick and thin. And
you ain't never been thick, Ken.
Listen, I'm getting thick. I'm getting thicker by the second. But yo,
let me tell you, got the wit.
I'll tell you what though, man, like that thing. So like I've got that, and I recently got rid of my MPC Live, and now I'm on the Force, which feels very much like it's got MPC DNA all over it. You know what I mean? It's not an MPC, but it's MPC DNA all over it. And I just gotta say, like,
yeah, definitely. I would say so too.
Oh, here's what I'll say about the Force. If you come from an MPC, but you want that. Like you've grown your studio to where you have a whole lot of gear that you want to live sample in quickly, the Force is that. Like it's the live sampling, equivalent of the old school MPC routine. Because now it's like,
and if you're an Ableton head, if you love Ableton, especially, like the Force is like a no brainer. And if you love MPCs and you love Ableton, like the Force is like it's a no brainer.
Yeah, I'm finding myself extremely happy with the Force right now, because nowadays I'm creating more of my samples in time than I am sampling previous material that was already created. So because of that, it allows you to use that same MPC kind of workflow, but capture things and move forward much quicker. So
that's kind of tight.
It's an interesting hybrid, and not without its issues, and not
they all have their issues.
Exactly. But it's just one of those things where right? I feel like it's like a PC Mac thing, where like some people need one thing and some people need another thing. I'm a Mac guy. Like I don't knock PCs at all. I think PCs are great. My daughter has a Surface Pro that I envy. It's awesome. Yeah, but certain things like just speak to different people, and currently that's what's speaking to me, but I'm also like, I've been creating new beats on my 2000 XL, and I'm finding myself super hype about it. Like it's and the what is it, the pocket operator, the pocket operator sampler. Ooh, that thing is dope.
Yeah, I have 2 of those. That thing is tight. Damn.
So, yo, I'm gonna tell y'all, man. I think this has been a dope conversation.
Yeah.
I almost. I think I'm gonna plan one for every one of the dope samplers that's out there. Just
we should do a part 2 for the MPCs at some point.
I think we do got to do a part 2. We're gonna come back and do a part 2 of the MPCs because there's still some stuff. I want to get more into mods, and I also want to get more into like some of those weird sort of techniques that maybe some of us may have kind of come across.
Oh yeah,
and you know how it influenced some of the things that we might do on other stuff. So yeah, we may have to do a part 2 of it. But yo, Ricky, you go for it. Go for it.
Really quick, I want to share something here because I think you guys would really appreciate this. I haven't really found a space to say this before, but I was kicking it with Illa J Dilla's brother.
Yep.
And he showed me something that was like mind blowing. Basically, he has the MPC live and he's like, oh, check this out. It can load old projects. So he loaded up his brother's sessions and projects on the MPC, presses play, and you see the pads lighting up and all the song starts playing and you're just like, what?
It's like Dilla out the machine.
Yeah,
dude, it was like mind-blowingly. Literally, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, I don't even know what to say right now.
It's pretty interesting because on Illa J's last album that he put out, I think most of it was produced were Dilla beats, and I'm like, well, that must have been a long process to go through, you know, the 3000 and transfer that. I even know Dilla had an early Pro Tools TDM system, so getting stuff off of that. So I'm like, whoa. So basically just putting it in the live and then just tracking it out from there or converting that to an Ableton session is crazy to me. Like just the fact that you can do that.
Yeah, it was so wild. So it's just like this weird.
For the longest time, it was just
circle.
Programs, and now you can do the whole sequence and everything.
That's wild. Hey, Ricky,
that's crazy, Ricky. My mind would have been blown watching that.
Absolutely.
It is saying it. Yeah, I was just like,
I
think I just like left. I didn't even know what to. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I was like, dude, hold it together, bro. Hold it together. You know.
I got a special shout out though, Ricky. I don't know if you remember this, but you probably don't. But this is really awkward. So, Control Voltage in Portland, right? I won a Novation circuit when you were there.
Oh the Novation City takeover.
Right. So you went there, and I won a Novation circuit, and I also bought my bass station on that day.
Dude.
And the bass station is probably one of the most used pieces of gear.
Hell
I
yeah.
have. And the circuit is a dope little loop creator that I've been doing some weird stuff. My homies from North Carolina, Oak City slums.
Oh, dope. Yeah.
Awesome.
He's the homie.
Yeah, that's family for me. And we just we gotta get you back on and talk about some of that stuff too.
Like, we do. And we gotta do this in person when all this is over with.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, this Rona, bro. Like,
yeah, man. This has been awesome.
No more Rona.
Super dope.
No more.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad this was a really good conversation, and we're gonna do a part 2 and talk about some more stuff. But
shout out to Gary Gnu. If anybody wants to check out some amazing MPC 2000 stuff, go check out Gary Gnu on Bandcamp. I just wanted to say that.
We're going to plan a little bit more of these. But this is Beat People Podcast, episode 67, the classic standalone MPC. Let's just go ahead and call it part 1. But this has been brought to you by Beat People, and go to beatpeople.com and cop things and support the channel.
Cop things.
All right, so peace.
Much love, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
Yeah, that was
that was a good show.
It was a good show. Really, really good.
Super
I enjoyed
tight.
the conversation so much.